Back three. Drills it. Lance Terry ties things up here in the second half. 29-29, 3 minutes into this second frame.
Georgia Tech then took its first lead, but SU snatched it right back. A 6-0 run was highlighted by J.J. Starling reaching double-digit points in his 8th straight appearance.
Starling one-on-one drives inside the right alley, up high off the glass, and it falls. J.J. Starling told all his teammates to calm down, get out of the way, takes it himself, and puts it home.
The teams traded punches once again, but SU soon constructed a 7-0 run, capped by an Eddie Lampkin inside score to put him 1 rebound and 1 point away from a double-double.
He's calling all the way for it. Wants it on Suarez. Spins back to his right. Baby hook. Up, and it goes. And 1. Eddie Lampkin rocks the baby around the three-point line. And Syracuse is up by 6. 8.5 left to go.
A free throw extended the Syracuse lead to 7, and the Yellow Jackets found it hard to make a dent. Every time Georgia Tech scored, SU found a response. This time, it was Chris Bell's turn.
2-3 zone giving Syracuse a little bit of a hard time. Backdoor feed to Chris Bell. Reverse layup goes in. Chris Bell with the backdoor cut. Double clutch and puts it off the glass. The Orange back up by 6.
SU never had a comfortable lead, but things seemed good for the Orange heading into the final stretch, and J.J. Starling kept his strong play going into the final minute.
Starling with the ISO, drives inside, gets to the right elbow, turnaround jumper, and he's clutch and drills it. Give it to your leader and get out of the way. The Orange up by 6, a minute to go.
The teams traded shots through the final 60 seconds, but SU's late lead proved too much.
For the first time this season, the Orange are victorious in ACC play, and for the 2000th time in program history, Syracuse wins. The Orange beat Georgia Tech and the Yellow Jackets 62-55 here in the Dome.
A big win for Syracuse against Georgia Tech to improve to 1-3 in the ACC win column, 7-8 overall. And before we get to our double overtime to talk things over about how good of a performance, or sloppy but also decent of a performance this was, we have to talk about our Pepsi player of the game. And I think this one, despite there not being too many stars, has to be obvious. It's J.J. Starling, coming back for a second game. First time out, last time against Florida State. Good first half, didn't close well. This time, he finished well, had a couple of highlights in here, and 21 points overall for J.J. Starling, the Baldwinsville native, with a big performance in his second game back from a left hand injury, and that propelled Syracuse to a 62-55 win over Georgia Tech. Our next broadcast is Saturday on January 11th. Syracuse will take on Boston College at the Conti Forum in Boston. Countdown to tip-off starts at 2:30, and our tip-off at 3 o'clock against Boston College. Syracuse looking to improve to 2-3 in conference play against a BC team, by the way, that just lost by double digits to Georgia Tech a few days ago. Some thank yous to hand out before we get to the double overtime. Our producer, Hudson Ridley, our engineer, Jordan Leonard, who will be on the double overtime, Josh Richardson on radio replay, and the entire WAR sports desk. The double overtime set to go up until 11 o'clock, and as a reminder, you can call 315-443-2011 or text us at 315-556-3929. Our hosts are Jordan Leonard and Andrew Della Piana. A sluggish one, guys, overall, but Syracuse finds a way to get its first ACC win on the back of J.J. Starling with 21 points.
They did it, Ryan. They won! Jordan, I might shed a tear. Syracuse basketball just won a power conference. Oh my! It's too much.
I mean, if they
Take
didn't win this game, they weren't going to win a lot of these games. I will say this is one of the first times I think you could feel confident in the way that Adrian Autry handled the lineups. A couple of lineup changes, continuing putting Chris Bell on the bench and Jaquan Carlos not in the starting lineup. Some good coaching today from Adrian Autry.
Absolutely. Still led to some major offensive struggles, which we'll dive into, and we'll be joined by a reporter who is in the Dome, Jake Klein. He'll be joining us in just a little bit, but for now, the double overtime begins right now.
The game may be over, But our coverage on WAER is not. Here on the Double Overtime, we'll be breaking down all the highs.
Copeland, left wing three! It's good! Quadir Copeland wins the game for Syracuse! For the first time in 1,856 days, Syracuse beats an AP top 10 team.
Darling drives to his right, puts up a layup. No good, but Copeland with the putback slam. Oh my goodness, Quadir Copeland makes a statement.
And the lows.
Syracuse walked into John Paul Jones Arena looking to make a statement, and Virginia said, oh no you don't. Cavaliers 84, Orange 62, your final.
Well, Syracuse heads into North Carolina and faces its worst loss in its history in the Atlantic Coast Conference.
Heartbreaking. The Orange bow out in the second round of the ACC tournament for the second year in a row.
Delivering our hottest takes along the way.
The expectations should be higher after a few years when Adrian Autry sets that bar, but the bar is still low.
5-star, Donnie Freeman. Yep. I mean, this guy has the tools. I think he could be the truth.
I think Lampkin and the combination of him and Carlos will rejuvenize this team and make them an actual complete basketball team.
Get your voice heard by calling in at 315-443-2011 or check out our YouTube at WAER Sports Talk. It's the Double Overtime, and it starts right now.
It happened. It
That's what he
happened,
just said.
Jordan.
That's what he just said.
Syracuse basketball won a conference game against a Power 5 opponent.
I think that's the most shocking thing is the Power 5 opponent part. I mean, 3 losses in a row to start ACC play is one thing, but having to go into the new year, into January without being a Power 5 team, that's a feat of misery. But they finally got it done. They finally got it done.
The calendar is turned and the world is good again. Jordan Leonard, Andrew Delapiano with you here on the Double Overtime, taking you up till 11 o'clock after Syracuse's 62-55 victory over Georgia Tech. We want to hear your thoughts from tonight's game. Call in 315-443-2011 or shoot us a text 315-556-3929. And don't forget to interact with us on X at WAER Sports Stack. And hey, also pop us on at home on YouTube at WAER Sports Talk as well. But Jordan, we said this right off the top. This was one of the ugliest games of basketball I think either of us have ever watched.
One of the quickest games, too, until the last couple minutes. I mean, you look at a first half where Georgia Tech shot under 30% from the field, and this is one of the games where you're struggling to figure out if it's good Syracuse defense, bad Georgia Tech offense, maybe a little bit combined of two, but both teams shooting under 40% in the first half, a 25-24 game. It felt like we were watching a game that Virginia was playing defense against both teams, by the way.
That's true. Well, they did score, 25 points in the NCAA tournament last game, but I'm just looking at this box score. Georgia Tech.
I got you there.
4 for 21 from 3.
Freshly printed out box score, by the way.
There you go. 3 of 11 from the free throw line. Syracuse, not much better. 4 for 20 from 3, 6 for 9 from the line. Yeah. I mean, it doesn't get worse than that.
The only way Syracuse can win games is if teams shoot that bad.
Oh, that's sad. Oh, that's sad.
When you look at it coming into the day, Syracuse's defense has been pretty piss poor all year. I mean, the first half against Florida State, I think, was their best half of defense. And then the second half was just atrocious. And yes, you have to give them credit for playing well, but Georgia Tech couldn't hit the broadside of a barn today. It was nuts. This is like the only way they can win games because coming into today, this shows you how bad Syracuse has been all season long. They were giving up more points than they actually scored per game. That's how you know you're a bad team. The only way you can win, especially Syracuse-wise, because they could score. They were scoring like 77 points per game, is have a team shoot that bad, and Georgia Tech did that.
I like the analogy you use. I always go for you couldn't hit water.
The ocean?
You couldn't hit water if you fell out of a boat. That's what it was like watching this game, just trading. It felt like we were watching a game from like the 1950s, didn't it? The fact that either team could not score. And it's not like either defense was playing stellar as well. Like there was good contest from either side. They just weren't hitting anything.
There was no stifling defense.
Absolutely not.
They weren't forcing them into bad shots. They were point-blank shots. They were, inside the, mid-range and stuff, but they they could not hit a shot today. Both teams, for the most part. Syracuse finally turned it on in that second half, or in the middle area there, when they went on a 6-0 and a 12-2 run in the second half. But it was just an ugly watch. It was quick. It was quick. We got a long double overtime all the way up until 11 p.m., but it was an ugly watch tonight.
Well, you saw the 3 that Lance Terry hit towards the end of the game. Griffin Marcy Gino Antamarito described it as the Derrick Rose game-winning three against Cleveland a couple years ago. I don't think it was to that extent.
Well, Griffin, I mean, the point of the game definitely was not comparable.
Well, that game was like 91-89. I know our engineer Hudson really is a big Bulls fan, so he could probably get that answer correctly right away. But that was a low-scoring game as well, so I kind of see the similarities between that, but
the only reason
really.
Gino remembers that moment, too, is because of the Derrick Rose night the other night. All the Derrick Rose memories kind of
well, they are
in
retiring
last
his
week.
number, so.
Well, next year. They had a Derrick Rose night, though, the other day.
It'll be next year?
Yeah, they're retiring his number next year. It
No.
was a Derrick Rose night, was it a week or two ago?
Don't know how I feel about that. Either way.
What's wrong with it?
I mean, just get over now.
They should throw a J.J. Starling night after.
Oh, they should. Oh, I am so glad that J.J. Starling is back for this team.
How glad?
The gladdest you can be.
The gladdest?
Yes, the gladdest.
It's an interesting. I don't know if that's a word.
It doesn't have to be. 21 points, 9 of 16 shooting. Don't look at the turnovers. He had 4 of them. This team still can't continue to take care of the basketball. Not the problem. J.J. Starling is head and shoulders above everyone else on this team right now, Jordan. He is the alpha. He's the dog. He's the guy you want during crunch time, and tonight was a perfect example of that once again.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. J.J. Starling, especially, you felt it more when he was out, especially in that Tennessee game. I mean, they got absolutely bulldozed in that one. But when you look at just the way that he impacts the offense, and you can look at it many different ways. He's a guy that can create his own shot. He can direct an offense, be another ball handler for Jaquan Carlos. We've seen it now in 2 straight games where he can open up Chris Bell. Chris Bell was mired in a slump the entire season for the most part. He has 4 or more threes against Florida State, 18 points. He had 13 more points today. You know, part of that probably coming off the bench, I think, helps his mindset a little bit. But when you have a guy that can drive down the lane like JJ, create his own shot, and he's not afraid of taking it. He's had double-digit field goal attempts in every game that he's played. Not many, obviously, because of the injury, except for Colgate. He had 16 attempts today. He's not going to be efficient, I think, initially coming off injury, 31% from the floor against Florida State, 9 of 16 tonight. But it's just the aggressiveness that really helps the offense.
It takes this offense to a completely another level, but we got a tweet from Anthony Bally after our double overtime tweet went live. He said, even Syracuse's wins feels like they're dragging foes to their level. Can't escape the gravitational pull of the orange hole.
Yeah.
It's a good way to put it, right? Yeah.
The orange hole, it's a good one. I would agree. I mean, we were watching the game. I mean,
yeah.
At this point, Syracuse, knows they're not going to the NCAA tournament. There's been a lot of talk the last couple of days, being one of the 3 teams without an ACC win. Would they even make the ACC tournament? And you're looking at the season and, what can you gain from this? And I feel like at some point when you know your team is bad, you're not going to the postseason, moral victories are a thing, but when you win a game, and you got to give Syracuse defense some credit. Georgia Tech didn't make the shots. They did play solid defense. They cleaned up the boards well, 48 rebounds,
it's like the only thing they're good at doing.
Rebounds.
It's like the only thing they're good at doing.
You're not wrong. But you would want a more fun-looking or, promising win. But again, this game was just, limping. It was like the status of the amount of crowd there was. There was 13,000 people there in the Dome today. That's the smallest crowd that I've seen in the Dome in my 4 years here at Syracuse. And, there's a reason, because they still play like this. They managed to get a win against Georgia Tech, who had been hot coming in. But I agree with that tweet. It was a pretty, just a sad watch of a win.
If you want to be like Anthony and chime into the show, please do so. How are you guys viewing this victory at home in Syracuse's 62-55 triumph over Georgia Tech? If you want to call on the show, please do so. 315-443-2011 or shoot us a text at 315-556-3929 at WAER Sports Talk on Twitter and YouTube. Alongside Jordan Leonard, I'm Andrew Delpiana here on the Double Overtime. But it's really true, though, Jordan, isn't it? Syracuse has been in a lot of these games this season, but the closeout factor really hasn't been there, and maybe you can credit that tonight to Georgia Tech missing so many free throws down the stretch. I mean, you could have had 2 Chick-fil-A meals tonight because they missed 4 consecutive free throws in the second half.
It was shades of Syracuse. I mean,
Yeah.
3 of 11 from the free throw line for Georgia Tech on the night. In the second half, they went 3 of 10. I mean, that's as bad as you can get from the free throw line. Georgia Tech, the worst free throw shooting team in the ACC coming in, so nothing unexpected. But yeah, I mean, Syracuse gave Georgia Tech so many chances to win this game.
Oh, on an unbelievable amount of chances.
Even though Syracuse went on a couple runs, largest run was 7-0 run. They went on a 12-2 run at some point, like I mentioned earlier. There were just so many times that Syracuse was trying to, like Georgia Tech, you can come win this game. But the free throws, they just could not make them. It was sad. I mean, like you said, the 2 Chick-fil-A meals, you can't get anything worse than that.
Well, it's good for the fans, though, at least.
Well,
you're a big
yeah.
Chick-fil-A guy, right?
I like Chick-fil-A.
Okay.
As Gino Mantamarino said on the broadcast, eat more chicken.
It's a great
great
restaurant
phrase.
to go to.
Syracuse 6 of 9 from free throw line, so at least they hit their free
So
throws.
they're back, right? They're back.
No,
They
they're
can
not
hit
back.
Okay,
They're not
all
back. And I don't want to be a Debbie Downer because they did win the game, but
I mean, when you do it in fashion like this, you're like,
we're past the point
thanks.
We're past the point of just winning games. Like if winning games is important if you're going to the NCAA tournament or probably an ACC tournament, which they still have a chance to do. Don't get me wrong, but we're past the point of just winning games matters.
I mean, they scored 62 points,
which is fine. Again, if you play, if you win the game,
if you're playing a high school team,
yeah.
I mean, Georgia Tech is the 3rd worst free throw shooting team in the ACC entering tonight. Syracuse is dead last, so it was a battle of mid. That's what we were watching tonight, is the battle of mid at the JMI Wireless Dome, and Syracuse just happened to be the less mid team. That's what it boils down to.
I guess it came down to JJ scoring 21 as being the best part of the mediocreness. And again, I don't want to be a Debbie Downer, but 8 for 38 combined from 3. Syracuse, like you said earlier, Andrew, 4 3-point makes, 20%. They ended up 41% from the field, but they were sub 40% for most of the game. They still turned the ball over 18 times.
5 straight games, Jordan, where they've had 15-plus turnovers. And Adrian Autry says after every game, it's like I'm watching Groundhog Day. We're improving. We're learning to turn the ball over less. No, you're not!
I mean, I guess you could say they found the killer instinct in finding a way to win the game, but
find ways to win.
We were talking about this during the game, especially during that second half, when you're looking at in the stat sheet, the team comparison. What stat is Syracuse winning that is winning them the game? Like free throws is one of them. We talked about it. There is really no stat. They out-rebounded.
Lead time? Does lead time count? Because they won that battle.
Lead time technically counts. It is on that team comparison part of it. And they did lead the game for 36 minutes. So I'll give them credit for that. But, I mean, like I said, the 18 turnovers, the 12 steals from Georgia Tech, there's just nothing that can make you feel confident going into games after this that they can parlay this into many wins going forward.
Well, we got a caller on the line, Jay from Baldwinsville. You agree with Jordan that doesn't make Syracuse any better in a victory like this?
Oh, my God, guys. There's no way. It's basically what it is that there was 2 bad teams playing out there in front of, let's be honest, guys, no more than 10,000.
Yeah, that attendance was definitely they did. I don't know if you heard it. They clocked it around just over 13,000 in attendance.
Yeah, no way.
There's no way. There's absolutely no way.
Yeah, I got a, what is the thing? I got a bridge to sell you or something. No way was that the deal. But here's the thing, guys. It's just they're painful to watch. I mean, between Chris Bell throwing up, what did he throw? 2 3-point air balls tonight?
Yep. One of them actually resulted in a J.J. Starling and 1 2.
Counts an assist, right?
That's one of those where you're like, that was a pass. That was a pass.
Yeah, exactly. And then to watch like Lampkin not have one of his stellar performances, but then to a rock the baby after he gets he rolls one barely over the rim.
You gotta love when somebody does a rock the baby when you're up by like 5 and you're 6-8 on the year and you're sub 500.
You're also the biggest guy on the floor.
Yeah, I mean these guys do not inspire the confidence that I need to go out to Nye Ford and buy a vehicle from them. I mean
That's a good pull. Jay. They're all in the Nye commercials. I mean they're selling cars left and right.
I mean, maybe they should concentrate a little bit more on the game and less trying to sell us a Ford F-150. I think, it would do them some good. But,
yeah. Well, Jay, I'll ask you this. JJ, 21 points. He definitely got better in the second game coming back from injury. What did you think of JJ's performance, and what do you think he can do going forward?
Oh, listen, you guys nailed that. JJ's the best player on the team. He's the leader on the team. I don't know who else could be a captain on that team because, to be honest with you, at some point these guys go into mental withdrawal. So I don't think anybody. I mean, I would throw Peter the captaincy above any of the other guys, but JJ is by far the leader. In fact, if you watched during the timeout, I mean, he was literally in the huddle, coaching. He did everything but warm the bus up after the game.
Were you at the game, Jay?
Well, yeah, I was at the game.
Okay.
I was one of the poor souls.
How was the environment in your eyes?
One word, guys, quiet.
Quiet? Even on that 12-2 run when they were kind of making a run in the second half?
Yeah, the loudest the crowd got was during the T-shirt toss.
There you go.
And but yeah, I mean, they trudged up there, and at one point, one other thing I want to get out, guys, the art of the mid-range jump shot is lost because let me tell you something. The local media, the local press is going to talk about that it was SU's defense. No, it was the missed opportunities that Georgia Tech had to, instead of taking it into the basket and try to throw up a wild left-hand layup attempt, if they just pulled up from anywhere from 6 to 8 feet out, they would have buried us. At the end of the game, George for Georgia Tech kind of was getting it. He hit a couple of just inside the free throw line jump shots.
I was confused on that too because with Donnie Freeman out, he's really the only rim protector on Syracuse because Eddie Lampkin can't jump that high. Why not drive to the hoop? And they just didn't do it all night. I mean, the tallest guy was Eddie, and he's objectively not a rim protector. He's barely a defensive player down in the paint.
Yeah. So the amount of shots that Georgia Tech passed up on, that were within that. Just inside the free throw line and opted to throw it back out for a off-balance three-pointer. It was remarkable. So the only guy that did a worse job, I feel, coaching tonight was Damon Stoudemire for Georgia Tech.
Agree with that.
I mean, it was rough. It was rough, guys.
You got it. Jay, really appreciate the call. If you want to call in like Jay did, please do so at 315-443-2011 or text us at 315-556-3929. Don't forget to interact with us on Twitter and YouTube at WAER Sports Talk. Syracuse wins this ballgame 62-55 over Georgia Tech. He's Jordan Leonard. I'm Andrew Del Piano on the double overtime up until 11 o'clock. And Jay made a lot of good points there, Jordan, talking about how J.J. Starling is becoming the catalyst. But, again, a game where Syracuse didn't win, but more so Georgia Tech lost. And the point he brought up that was really impressive, that the game of basketball is evolving. Again, I don't want to get too big picture here. How we're evolving into a three-point game and an inside-the-paint game, that the mid-range game is basically dead. And I think we saw that on full display tonight.
Well, it's all about efficiency. Who wants to take a long two, a 19, 20-footer when they can just step back a couple feet and shoot from three? And I think the one player that really exemplifies that a lot, other than JJ, he could definitely take the mid-rangers and has in the past, is Donnie Freeman. He didn't play today. That's why I think, you're not seeing that today from Syracuse. And Jay made a good point. Georgia Tech did that a lot. And it was constant, in and around the paint, around the free throw line, and then just bricking field goals left and right, whether it was the depth perception of the dome. Maybe they were so not used to the amount of fans that were not there that the depth perception became even worse.
It worked. It always works.
The reverse.
Well, someone who also wants to talk about attendance, Doug from Syracuse. Doug, were you in attendance for tonight's game?
I was, guys, and I got to say, I don't think I've ever seen the dome that empty for any game. It felt like an exhibition game out there today. And, I think the style of play on both ends also made it feel like that. Honestly, just one of the worst basketball games I've ever watched in my life.
Well, at least you potentially can get some free Chick-fil-A.
That is true.
Couple missed free throws.
That is true. That's big. That is big for the program. We'll take the free Chick-fil-A all day.
So we got that going for us, which is nice. Yep. Go ahead, Doug.
about the only positive thing that happened on the court today. I called into you guys. I don't know if it was the same you guys at the third game of the season, and I was worried. Just we had so many nail biters against inferior opponents, and I think it all comes to light today. I think this coaching staff has zero clue. Unfortunately, it feels like they're gonna get another year. I can't for the life of me understand why. The Syracuse basketball team that I grew up loving is program, I should say, is gone. I don't recognize what I'm looking on the court, and I have kind of a hot take, I guess you could say. It's definitely a take no one else is going to have. Even if you look down at the end of the bench, the quality of our walk-ons, I mean, these guys are small. And it's crazy to be nitpicking walk-ons. Like, I understand how insane this sounds, but that's who they're going up against in practice. And I look at these teams that come in, and you look at the end of their bench. I mean, they're probably not great basketball players, right? But they are at least big and athletic. And we got little tiny guys that look like they're still in high school. So I don't know what they're getting in practice. They're not getting a look from those guys, though.
I can't argue with you. I don't think Noah Lobdell is really making Syracuse ready for any of these particularly opponents. So you're saying you called after the Youngstown State double overtime game?
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, that was if a double overtime win wasn't a cause for concern at that point. I mean, so I guess I'll ask you this. So you think Autry should be gone after the year, even with the recruiting class of Kyan Anthony and Sadiq White coming in next year?
I just don't know what's going to change with the court, right? Like, we don't do anything fundamentally well. We don't rebound well. We don't get out in fast break. Like, we don't do the fundamentals well. I don't know. You can put the best players in the world on the court, and this isn't the NBA, so you can have a really talented roster. But if you don't have the fundamentals and the X's and O's and a simple game plan and an offensive playbook, like, I don't know how different it's going to be. Sure, better players can win games. The players are going to win the games on their own. You'll probably win more games next year. But overall, the overall product, I don't see it changing. I mean, we saw it last year, too. We had a good season last year, 20 wins. Great. We still missed the tournament. It's not good enough. There is no identity to these teams. It comes down to fundamentals for me. When I'm sitting there watching the game, I'm like, I can't watch another 1-4 set where we get into a one-on-one back-down situation and throw up a fadeaway jumper. Like, it drives me crazy.
Well, they run a lot of ISO, and they just don't have enough ISO players. Like, it's not.
They have one. They have one.
He's not playing to his strengths. The rotations don't make any sense to me. He's got Elijah Moore, who's a volume shooter who gets pulled after he misses one shot every game. It's really hard to watch. So yeah, I mean, I would pull the plug. I've seen enough. Obviously, I'm just a fan, so I want the best for the team always. I hope Autry becomes the best coach in the world next year with these new guys. I would love to see that, but just from what I've seen and over the last 2 years, man, I don't know, man. I would be fine with moving on.
Doug, I got one more question for you before we let you go. And I've been seeing this a lot with Brent and Axe from Syracuse.com. It's talking about establishing and clarifying what the orange standard that Adrian Autry talks about. And Fran Brown did this with DART, and he gave an acronym for kind of the fans to grab on to. Is that something that you're looking for in terms of gaining confidence from Autry, is establishing what culture, what the orange standard that he wants to build?
Yeah, 100%. I think that's the biggest thing that we're missing. I think DART is the perfect example, right? I'm not saying he needs to come out with an acronym and have a mantra. You don't need to have that, but there needs to be a culture and an identity of any successful team in any sport, and we don't have that at all. The only guys that get hyped up are Peter Mastorovich, JJ, and Eddie. Everybody else is moping around because they don't know what they're doing. And I think that just comes from the top. So it's just really hard to watch. Last thing for me before I go, love your guys' show. Did we get an update on Donnie? What's going on with his foot?
So we haven't got an injury update just yet, but there was a walking boot on his right foot. It was below the calf, so it wasn't like a full leg boot, but it was a lower right leg injury, and he had a boot on it. So we'll have to wait and see if Autry said it after the game. We got our reporter Jay Klein coming on in a little bit. He was in the Adrian Autry presser, but thanks for joining the show, Doug. Had a lot of fun.
Yeah, thanks guys. Appreciate you.
And I think that last point, Andrew, is the biggest thing too. Like when we're talking about what this season now needs to show, as we've established, Syracuse not making the NCAA tournament, might make the ACC tournament, depends on how they play the rest of the way in conference play, is establishing that culture. Like, what is the Orange standard? What are they going to hang their hat on? Every team has to do something. What are they going to go in transition? They're going to try to do that. They're going to protect the ball. They're going to play defense. They're going to score more than any other team. What are you going to do to separate yourself from every other team in the country in the ACC? And Syracuse really hasn't proved anything on either end of the floor of what they're going to do that.
Yeah, I'm thinking of the things you just mentioned as the fundamentals of basketball. They don't do any of that really well, right? They're only good at like 1-2 things: rebounding and losing basketball games. That's really it, Jordan. So defensively, maybe you can hang your head on that, but you have to build some foundation moving forward. And again, we're 15 games in the season. We're already looking ahead for next year. And, the age-old question of, is Adrian Autry going to keep his job? That's not really for us to determine. But at the end of the day, you have to look at who's coming in next and who your supporting cast is next year. Because, again, with the age of the transfer portal, guys are coming in and out basically every single year. So you have to do something that tells other players around the country that are willing to play for you, this is the style of basketball we're playing, this is the talent we're bringing, and this is what we can do to move forward.
Yeah, they got to establish something because, they got the win today. We'll give them credit for that. But something needs to look better, or they need to look more. Something needs to change for Syracuse fans to gravitate towards this team, especially the men's lacrosse schedule just came out today. I mean,
Good
starts
news.
in less than a month. People could be transitioning to lacrosse season. The attendance officially
looked like it today.
13,935, but our first two callers, Doug and Jay, said it didn't look like that to themselves. But, it's going to be an interesting rest of the season.
A win is a win. And if we're going by Fran Brown rules, Adrian Autry and his team, they get washed tonight. Winners get washed, and that's 62-55 victory. But we'll take a short break here on the double overtime. We'll talk about some lineup changes that were made tonight. Of course, no Donnie Freeman in the starting lineup with that leg injury. So who filled his place? What did the Orange need to do going forward with this new starting lineup? We'll tell you all that and more on the other side after a quick break here on the double overtime. Stay with us.
The day that the election of Joe Biden was certified, a mob of Trump supporters attacked the Capitol. January 6th is a moment in history that all these years later, we're still learning more about. We'll hear a Capitol police officer reflect on the anniversary of the insurrection on the next Morning Edition from NPR News.
Weekdays from 5 to 9 on 88.3 WAER.
We know you've got a lot to do in a day, and sometimes it may not be easy to tune in at exactly the right time to catch WAER News. But WAER News is always available, wherever and whenever you are, without a paywall. Visit our website to use our live stream, or catch up on local and national news, as well as podcasts on our website at WAER.org.
There is a one-stop listen for everything Syracuse athletics.
You got great talent on this offense. Like, you can't go dormant for an entire quarter. And
the Ostrom Avenue podcast provides unique opinions, plus exciting interviews from industry experts.
Joined by Georgia Tech play-by-play broadcaster Andy Demetra, Syracuse.com, football beat reporter Emily Laker.
Check out weekly interviews on YouTube and listen at WAER.org or wherever you get your podcast.
One-on-one, drives inside the right alley, up high off the glass, and it falls. J.J. Starling told all his teammates to calm down, get out of the way, takes it himself, and puts it home.
Welcome back into the double overtime, everyone, following a Syracuse victory. Andrew, they did it.
Let's go.
They did it, 62-55 over Georgia Tech. SU not only gets its first ACC win of the year, they get their first Power 5 win of the year, Power Conference win of the year. Let's hear your thoughts. Call in 315-443-2011. You can text us 315-556-3929. Check us out on Twitter and YouTube at WAER Sports Talk. And Andrew, one of the things that contributed to this was the lineup changes. Chris Bell taken out of the starting lineup against Florida State. Today, Jaquan Carlos taken out of the starting lineup as well. Donnie Freeman was injured, so, who knows if he would be in it? Probably would have stayed in it if not. Jair Davis entered the starting lineup today. But those lineup changes came up very big for Syracuse in terms of what translated into a win.
Yeah, and I think it all really works out at the end of the day, right? Chris Bell, who has been not a big-time starter, but has been known more for his potential. Before that Florida State game, Jordan, 75 consecutive starts without coming off the bench. And then he scores 18 points on 4-4 from deep. You're like, what? Where have you been all season long in the starting lineup? It was a weird thing that Adrian Autry said after that game where, it's the old mantra of get ready or stay ready so you don't have to get ready.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of like something like that where Chris Bell has really had his struggles from deep this season. Maybe it was just a mindset thing to get it out of him, but, Chris Bell has looked a lot more solid in these last two games than I felt like we've seen from him all season long.
Well, Andrew, I don't know if you're an avid listener of the Ocean Avenue podcast, but I was advocating for that on the Ocean Avenue podcast last week.
You're a genius.
When you look at the way that Chris Bell plays, it just looks like he's wondering when he's going to come out, and I think it goes all the way back to when Jim Boeheim was the coach.
The first the bench. Oh,
the first 2 minutes he'd be put on the bench. He's looking to when he's going to the bench because of how he's either playing, missing his first couple shots or playing on defense. And at the end of the day, something needed to change.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you're not going to change a pattern of behavior, and it's not his behavior, it's his shooting percentage. You're not going to change a pattern unless you alter that pattern. So putting on the bench clearly helped, It coincided with J.J. Starling coming back, which I also think was a compounding factor.
That might help just a little bit.
But I think Chris Bell needs to stay on the bench. The last two games, 18 points, 13 points today. He didn't shoot lights out from 3, 1 of 5 from beyond the arc today compared to the Florida State game, but it was his first three-pointer since the month of November.
Yeah, since that Tennessee game, right?
In the Dome. It was the first one in the Dome for over a month. You just need to keep him off the bench because I think he does bring energy when he comes off the bench, and it's more of now he's thinking of when he's going to go in or compared to when he's actually going to come out.
Yeah, and that's, I think, was the confidence thing for him going forward, was he was always scared to being taken out. So to have this, normalcy back to Chris Bell, normalcy, I use that word kind of stingently because, again, he's not going to go 8 for 8 like he did against NC State a year ago, but still, if the guy can pour in double-digit points every night, it's better than him scoring 0, 1, 2 like we saw in the first 13, 14 games of the season where he's actually producing something for this team that already has a lot of offensive and three-point struggles.
Well, and that's the thing you need out of Chris Bell. You're not putting him on the floor to play defense.
Of course,
he obviously has to play defense to stay on it, but he's there to score.
Yeah,
so doing whatever you need, whether you're starting, bench him, to score is what you need to do if you're Adrian Autry. You think Chris Bell should stay on the bench for the foreseeable future because he's played well against Florida State and now Georgia Tech in back-to-back games? Call in 315-443-2011 or text us 315-556-3929. And I think the decision became easier for Coach Autry to put him on the bench because of how Lucas Taylor has played in the last couple games. He has, found his stroke from 3, went 2 of 5 tonight, has hit many more threes, and just looked better from beyond the arc in the last couple games. And his defense has been there all season.
You talk about a guy, not really come out of nowhere because he did play some solid minutes at Georgia State. And
he shot over 35%.
Exactly. So it's not like this guy was just like, oh my God, we've never heard of Lucas Taylor before, and now he's becoming somewhat important to Syracuse basketball. No, he's been hiding in the back of the bench, getting 15 to 20 minutes, but now this is a guy Syracuse fans are like, oh, this is someone who's a starter we should be paying attention to and is now playing important minutes for this team. I mean, you just look at tonight, 10 points and an efficient 4 of 7 from the field. You also grabbed 5 rebounds as well. So a guy that is starting to find his place a little bit more, which, again, Syracuse doesn't have a lot of guys that are just, again, he's in the starting lineup, but guys that are just bringing extra energy to this team, especially on the defensive end as well.
Kyle Cuff will be one of them. He didn't play that much today, only 4 minutes.
He's been very streaky this year, right?
He's been streaky, but the reason he's on the floor is for the energy. We'll get to Kyle Cuff in a little bit, but I was just going back and looking at Lucas Taylor's stats, and since that Maryland game, he's had 2 or more made threes in each of the last 5 games. 3 against Bucknell, 3 against Wake Forest, and then 2 the last 2 games, Florida State and Georgia Tech. And efficient of that, he was 2 of 5 tonight, 2 of 4 against Florida State, 50%, 42% against Wake Forest, 60%, 3 of 5 against Bucknell.
Some good numbers.
He's finally developing into that 3-and-D guy that Syracuse recruited him to be, and that's why the decision to, I think, bench Chris Bell became easier for Adrian Autry, the last couple games.
All you really need is a sigh of relief from one of those guys, right? Because it felt like at some point they just had to get going. I mean, you can't be putting up less than 5 points through like 13 games and be like, this is who we got in from the portal.
Well,
really?
Justin Taylor did it last year.
Don't bring up
They
Justin.
didn't get him for the Taylor.
You know what, Justin? I don't know why I was looking up Justin Taylor's stats like over
for
the
James
break.
Madison?
Yeah,
What
he's
has he done?
averaging less than like 2 points a game on like 30% shooting.
Yeah.
I mean, what are we doing?
Are we shocked?
No.
Just Justin Taylor. That probably hits at plus 500 for a Justin Taylor reference on the double overtime tonight.
Congratulations to everyone at home.
The other lineup change, Jaquan Carlos, who's been Adrian Autry's guy. Like
He's been his guy. He's been his guy.
He has defended him tooth and nail against a lot of critiques about what he brings to this team, what the purpose of having him on the floor is. And, he does bring certain elements that other guys don't in terms of being like a pass-first point guard and that aspect. But finally, Jaquan Carlos goes to the bench, only plays 10 minutes, 0 points, 2 assists, 1 rebound. And I have to say, and maybe this was just because, Georgia Tech shot the ball not great and it was, a one-game wonder kind of thing. But the defense looked better. And the offense, I think, looked better just by the fact that it wasn't Jaquan Carlos running the court the entire time.
10 minutes, Jordan, and it still might be too much for Jaquan Carlos. For me, at least, again, Jaquan Carlos is someone also I've been kind of rooting for this season as well, because the rumors I heard in the offseason when he transferred over from Hofstra was, this is a true playmaker. You're getting a guy who's going to spread the ball over the floor. He's going to be a slashing playmaker, will. Not up to the level of Judah Mintz, if you will, but someone who can really stretch out the defense, make life difficult when he attacks in the paint. I just haven't seen that like at all this season. Yeah. He had one double-double. Who even was that even against? I don't even remember.
He had 12 points, 12 assists against UAlbany.
Oh, UAlbany. Fantastic. What has he done since then? He had 4 assists in 37 minutes against Tennessee. What do you have in 10 minutes tonight? Oh, 2 assists, a rebound, 0 for 1 from the field. I mean, what element to the game does he bring on the offensive end?
Well, he brings a pass-first point guard. But the problem is, and I was also talking about this on the Ocean Rider podcast. Great listen, by the way, Andrew. If you're looking for a podcast to listen to.
Is that double plug from you?
Amazing
That's
listen.
awesome.
Me, AJ Myers, Griffin Bloomstein. But he brings a pass-first point guard aspect to it. But the problem with this team is if you have a pass-first point guard, what shooters is he passing to? J.J. Starling can shoot from 3. He's not a barn burner from 3. Chris Bell finally has turned it on for one game. Went 1 of 5 today from 3-point range. Lucas Taylor's probably your best 3-point shooter right now on this team because Chris Bell hasn't proven it consistently. Who is he passing to? That's the problem. And then if that's one passing aspect. The other passing aspect you can bring is to bigs down low. Sure, you can dump it off to Jair and Eddie, but who's doubling Jaquan Carlos driving to the hoop because he doesn't score? He doesn't drive to score. If you don't drive to score, you're not going to draw a double team. You can't dump it off to the dunker spot. So, I mean, it's great thought. I mean, the thought process was there. It is there, but the execution and like the 3D thinking is not there. It was really 2D thinking in terms of what he brings to the team.
I mean, this guy would have like an A++ teammate grade if he had
2K,
teammates that could score the basketball. But unfortunately, they can't score, so it's at like a D+, C-.
Well, and that's what Adrian Autry was saying pretty much the entire start of the season is like, you guys aren't seeing Jaquan's effect because the assist numbers are low because they're not hitting shots. And also, I'm there for that. I agree. That's
Coach, I'm trying
that's
to.
That's a good point. Coach, I'm trying to listen to you. But, oh, my gosh, how many times can you do it? And, when JJ got hurt, I get it. He's really your only ball handler.
No one left.
He had no one. He had to play 40 minutes. I mean, he really did because they had no other ball handler on the floor, although Kyle Cuff can handle the ball. I'm a Kyle Cuff apologist to an extent, a little bit.
That guy played at Kansas. Yeah, okay.
He did play at Kansas. Well, he didn't play, I guess, but he got
participated.
Like
me in high school.
I mean, hey, this was the least amount of minutes Jaquan Carlos played all year, 10 minutes. His least before that was Florida State with 19, and also he had 19 against Cornell. So maybe Adrian Autry is going off the Jaquan Carlos the trend in 2025. Maybe was that his New Year's resolution?
Well, you bring one J in, you got to take out the other, and that's J.J. Starling, so that's a big reason why.
I would take J.J. Starling over Jake. I mean, every Syracuse fan would, to be fair. I mean,
I would take half of J.J. Starling over Jaquan Carlos.
One hand to J.J.? What if he played with the brace?
With the brace on the non-shooting hand. Give him a couple of weeks. Yeah, I'd do it.
Interesting. The guy that did enter the starting lineup in replace of Jaquan Carlos was Elijah Moore. Didn't have the best game. No points, 0 of 3. All shots coming from three-point range. Played 17 minutes. He's really struggled. What he brings to this team, shooting, supposedly. He's struggled from three-point range. It's kind of like, Chris Bell. You're not putting him on the floor to play defense per se. He's not going to be a world beater on that side. He's struggled, but again, he's a freshman. It's nothing necessarily to be unexpected, but, you didn't really get the production there. But again, you won the game, so, got to take that.
I'm noticing a trend with the players you're bringing up.
What? That is the guy that went into the lineup with Jaquan Carlos.
They have great moments, but at the same time, their lowest moments are at their lowest points, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, the potential is there, right?
Well, that's what you could say about a lot of things.
Yeah, that's true for everything in life. But, bringing it down to what we're talking about here with Syracuse men's basketball is consistency is everything in this sport, right? Everyone can have a season high of 18, 20 points, but if you're going out there dropping 2-4 points every other night, great, you showed us you can score against who? Youngstown State and Colgate? Great.
Yeah, you're not wrong. What did you think about the performances of the people that entered the lineup, Elijah Moore and Jair Davis, or the people that have come out of the lineup the last couple days, Jaquan Carlos and Chris Bell? Call in 315-443-2011 or text us 315-556-3929. You can also call us in about this potential lineup that was brewing this entire game, maybe one to look forward to. We don't know how long Donnie Freeman's out just yet, but a lineup that really played a lot today was Jair Davis, Eddie Lampkin, Lucas Taylor, J.J. Starling, and Chris Bell. And when you look at it, that might end up being your best lineup to put on the floor if you're just talking about balance, because Jair and Eddie bring the down-low presence. JJ can shoot, theoretically. JJ can shoot. Lucas Taylor can shoot. Chris Bell can shoot. JJ can run the point. Lucas Taylor could also bring up the ball. It might be your best balanced lineup, and maybe Autry found something tonight.
And I think it's a good step moving forward, right? Again, we're in game 15, 16 of the season. I would hope by the time the calendar turned from 2024 to 2025, you'd have your rotation figured out. Maybe that's just me, Jordan, but that's at least how I view it. And again, J.J. Starling was out 7 games, so you throw a wrench into the mix, that's tough to come back for. But still, having some idea in your mind of what your, not even starting 5, but your best 5 out there, even towards the end of the game, I feel like should be set in stone a little bit earlier.
It should be.
Than Game 4 of conference play.
It absolutely should be. That's a given. But I think when you look at this team, I think they know their offense and what they need to run it through. They just don't do it 100% of the time. And it sounds weird to say, but obviously they didn't have JJ for that time between Tennessee and Florida State. But running that slashing offense with JJ at the point and also running it through Eddie Lampkin. He had 10 points in the second half. He rocked the baby at a record
that was
of
a great
6 and 8.
Yeah.
And I don't know what the exact score was at that particular time, but they
weren't
up by enough. They weren't up by that much. Their largest lead was 8. That just, I feel like, summarizes the season right there.
Oh, absolutely it does. Well, I think the point you're trying to you're trying to dive into at least is when JJ was out and you had these different influx of lineups being brought in basically every single game, it felt like we saw, you wanted to see some guys take a larger role or take that larger step or want to be that guy on offense. J.J. Starling's back there, and again, he's the ball-dominant guy. He's the one who you have to hope puts up 20 points every night, but can someone else step out there, please? J.J. Starling is holding the ball at the Block S logo for the first 20 seconds of the possession, and then, all right, it's time to get in our offense. Can we get some movement, please? Can we set some screen? Can someone else get open, please? It's the opposite of poetry in motion, if you will.
Well, and I think that's been the entire thing all season long is they don't start their offensive sets.
It's way too late.
Not even way too late, but if you actually count it, you could probably count it on 2 hands maybe. Mm-hmm. The amount of times Syracuse starts an offensive possession within 2 feet of the 3-point arc. I'm not even joking.
No, yeah.
Go back and watch the Maryland game, and I remember this.
I burned that game.
intimately because I was there and I called the game.
Okay.
The ball pressure that Maryland put on Syracuse, and other teams haven't put on the same thing, but Syracuse refuses almost to start their offense, the first pass, within 2 feet of the three-point arc. When you're starting your offense 35 feet from the basket, whatever the footage might be, I don't know what the footage is off the top of my head. If you start at 5 feet beyond the three-point arc, one, if your team can't shoot, nobody's guarding you out there. Two, how does that get you downhill at all? Like, what in that gets you downhill? What puts pressure on the defense? Nothing. I mean, you talked about J.J. Starling starting at the block-ass logo and not moving until like 12 seconds left on the shot clock. It's either that or their first pass is at like the JMA Wireless Dome logo, which is where Jesse Edwards made a random three against NC State 2 years ago. Like it's just
wow, great memory.
That's the one moment I know from the JMA Wireless Dome logo.
That's okay. Well, there's a reason they score like what 65, 70 points every night.
Yeah,
because their offense is so stagnant. It's so stagnant. So Jesse Edwards' three. Where was it from? You said.
Yeah, I thought it was from the JMA Wireless Dome logo, but our engineer Hudson really is saying it was from the right wing.
Oh, right wing. Right wing three.
Right wing three.
Nothing like a right wing
but
three.
I mean, the point still stands. Like,
yes,
nobody's getting downhill, and I hate to bring this name up again because he's long gone. But at least with Judah Mintz, he would put pressure on the defense and not start the off. I wouldn't call him the savior, but not start the offense this far beyond the three-point arc. It's just crazy.
He'd put some pressure on the defense at least, right?
Yes, he does.
The thing is too he was a true point guard. Right now.
I don't know how much I'd call him a true point guard.
Well,
he didn't really pass.
Yeah,
he passed a couple times.
He was more known for yamming on people, if you will, especially after those Thanksgiving games.
Yes, especially after those Thanksgiving games. J.J. Starling can yam on other people too. I'll give him that. I think J.J. is a better overall player, just because of he passes the ball.
That's important.
Yeah, he can slash to the rim. He doesn't have the mid-range game as J.J. probably does, especially the consistency. But that's neither here nor there. Yep. Judah's not coming back. Another change in the starting lineup. We're talking about lineups here on WAR. 315-443-2011, the number to call. Donnie Freeman, this wasn't a lineup change per se by Adrian Autry. Donnie Freeman out with an injury. We'll get some more information potentially with our reporter Jake Klein in a second. But Jair Davis enters the starting lineup, has 8 points, 9 boards, 4 assists, 32 minutes. And I feel like Jair, for the most part, he's had his bad games, but he's been a pretty consistent 8.6 boards kind of guy all year long. And I don't think this will be a permanent thing, but it was a solid addition. The only thing that I think having Jair in the starting lineup, especially with Eddie, is it shrinks the floor a little bit because Donnie at least can stretch the floor with, one, his height and his athletic ability, but two, his ability to make three-pointers.
Well, I hate to break it to you, Jordan, but he was the only guy that it was a negative tonight.
Oh, and what? Plus minus?
Yeah, you plus minus guy?
I'm a big plus minus
guy. All
right.
Actually. Well, I hate to rain on your parade a little bit, but I want to agree with the point you're making that Jair Davis is something that a lot of Syracuse players do not have that I love, and that's efficiency. Like, he had that 3-game stretch where he made, 13, 14 shots in a row, something like that.
Something like that.
So, the guy, I say this word again and again, potential. The guy has the potential to be great, but it's a problem with a lot of the rest of the team. They don't have it. But again, Jair is someone who comes in and he makes an impact on the glass, which again is Syracuse's best attribute as a team by far. Eddie Lampkin's been kind of so-so in that category, but Jair Davis just adds that extra element of rebounding, whether it's on the defensive end or the offensive end.
Donnie had a double-double against Florida State. He's been a good rebounder. It's one of his niches so far this season. A lot of stuff to break down. We just talked about the lineups for an extended period of time. We're going to talk a lot more the attendance, the first half offense, everything you can imagine. Our reporter Jay Klein was in the Dome to watch it all happen with Doug and with Jay from Syracuse as well. We got him coming up after a quick break here on the Double Overtime. Don't go anywhere.
A lot to do in a day, and sometimes it may not be easy to tune in at exactly the right time to catch WAER News. But WAER News is always available, wherever and whenever you are, without a paywall. Visit our website to use our live stream or catch up on local and national news, as well as podcasts on our website at WAER.org.
During a busy day, it can be hard to make room for even one more thing. So it's a real plus that All Things Considered from NPR News is great for multitaskers. you can confidently add being well informed to your to-do list and know that you will get it done. Whether you're cleaning out your junk drawer on a quick drive or something else, listen to All Things Considered every weekday afternoon.
Weekdays from 4 to 6 on WAER.
There is a one-stop listen for everything Syracuse athletics.
You got great talent on this offense. Like, you can't go dormant for an entire quarter. And
The Ostrom Avenue podcast provides unique opinions, plus exciting interviews from industry experts.
joined by Georgia Tech play-by-play broadcaster Andy Demetra, Syracuse.com, football beat reporter Emily Laker.
Check out weekly interviews on YouTube and listen at WAER.org or wherever you get your podcast.
I'm Marco Werman. The World's Newsroom brings you the big picture stories and some other stuff.
The whole of Niagara Falls is ripping over my right shoulder. As an ice climber, it's the largest, wildest thing I could think of climbing, and it's never been climbed. So I'm really happy to have had the opportunity to go and stick an ice tool into it.
Join us and hear the world.
Weekdays from 3 to 4 on 88.3 WAER.
Sets it over by Autry on the far sideline. Chest pass to Lucas Taylor. Puts it on the deck with his left hand. Carves inside left of block. Puts it off the glass for 2. Lucas Taylor on the board for the first time in the second half.
Syracuse doing some good on offense, if you will, in a 62-55 victory over Georgia Tech again. Not great offense, but offense at that. Andrew Del Piana, Jordan Leonard, and we're joined by a reporter from tonight's game, Jake Klein. Jake, how you doing?
I'm well. How are you?
Doing well. Let's dive right in with some attendance numbers. I know it's been a big theme of this show so far. Jay and Doug, they both called in. The number we have here for attendance of this ball game, 13,935. Now, statistically, the lowest of the season. Did it feel like to you that number at all?
No, I mean, I was walking back from the Dome, and I was listening to you guys and Jay's call, and I thought he was spot on, and he was at the game, obviously. No, it was not even close. If I had to ballpark it, it was probably 10,000, but there was a point mid-first half where I legitimately counted all the people in the third deck, and it was like 400-something.
That's insane.
Not good.
I will
much
say,
free time?
on the pregame video on WAR Sports on Twitter, somebody commented, "Looks like a big crowd tonight, guys."
Yeah, it was bad, and not only was the crowd small, it was totally uninvolved. Jay said it, but they had like the guy, the fan shoots from half court, and then they had the t-shirt toss, and then they were like throwing pizzas, and until that bad foul call on Eddie Lampkin, with 2 minutes left or so in the game, those 3 fan promotions were like the most involved that the fans were all night. It felt like a funeral in there at some point.
Well, you watched the game, right? In the offense that was on the floor? Okay.
Yeah.
So there wasn't a lot to be excited about from either side, if you will.
No, it did feel at times like one of those old school like Syracuse, Virginia games.
That's
from, like,
exactly
10
what
years
Jordan
ago.
said.
Yeah.
That's what I said.
It was
or
it was
one
nasty.
without a 3-point arc, because considering neither team
And
could make
they
it.
made 8 combined on 41 attempts. Unbelievable.
Well, Adrian Autry said at least at post-game he wanted to thank the fans for coming out because there's been a lot of noise lately. So, they did, quote-unquote, get 13,935 people.
I mean, they just cannot
into the
keep
JMA
people away
Wireless
from those
Dome.
doors. They just stay there.
I mean,
the loyalty is unbelievable.
We love Brent Axe, and apparently you could get a $1 ticket to tonight's
Yeah.
game.
He did tweet that out earlier. It was some alternative ticket app, but I mean the fact that anywhere you could get a ticket for $1, that tells you probably all you need to know.
Brutal.
So other than the attendance being down, especially compared to Syracuse's past, what was the biggest takeaway from a Syracuse win? That they did get the job done, but didn't feel, inspiring. Let's call it that.
Yeah, I think it's easy to say it wasn't inspiring because of the offense, but I did think that was probably their best defensive performance of the season.
Yeah.
They were incredibly communicative on defense. I thought they were really smart in the fact that they saw Georgia Tech as a team that kind of makes its bones offensively inside and really only has two competent, above-average three-point shooters on its team in Javian McCullum and Lance Terry, and they played very soft over screens, sometimes most of the time went under screens, and let Georgia Tech take 21 three-pointers in the game, which is more three-pointers than Georgia Tech has taken in any ACC game so far. And, I mean, it shows in the field goal percentage. It worked for Syracuse. I thought it was a very smart game plan by Adrian Autry's coaching staff defensively.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at, too, I think the lineup that they were playing is probably their best overall defensive lineup. Because if you look at the entire season, Donnie Freeman didn't play today with the injury, but Elijah Moore too. They've both had their freshman moments on defensive lapses. Lucas Taylor and J.J. Starling are probably the best defensive players, other than I guess Jair Davis could be one down low. But they definitely had a solid defensive lineup on the floor, and they did do that. They did take away the three. Georgia Tech didn't take many because I guess now in the day and age of college basketball, 21 threes, that's not a huge amount. But they did a good job of preventing them from getting down low. We were talking about the mid-range potentially being a lost art of basketball. They weren't getting down low. They were literally basically shooting those 6 to 8 footers outside the paint to the sides and free throw line extended.
Yeah, but that's what Georgia Tech wants to do. Something like 48% of their offense is generated from dunks and what are categorized as close twos. And I thought Syracuse, for the most part, took away that inside presence that Georgia Tech likes to use and forced them to just huck up threes, and it didn't work for them.
If you have a question for Jake, again, he was in tonight's game at the Dome. Call in 315-443-2011 or shoot us a text at 315-55639. And don't forget to interact with us on Twitter at WAER Sports Talk. We're also on YouTube at WAER Sports Talk as well. Jordan Leonard, Andrew Delpiana, Jake Klein will be up until 11 o'clock tonight. And Jake, something that Adrian Autry talked about with Chris Bell, especially with him coming off the bench. What have you seen in the differences from Chris Bell over these last couple of games that we really weren't seeing overall in the first handful of games or so?
Yeah, he looks comfortable to me again, and he looks confident to me, and I think that's a huge thing with Chris Bell, who's, I think it's safe to say, he's emotionally been fragile in his time at Syracuse. And we were talking to Doug Sherman, who was on play-by-play, a WAER alum, for ACC Network tonight before the game, and he shared with us part of a conversation from their conversation with Adrian Autry before the game that they then talked about on air. Part of the reason that Autry said he took Bell out of the starting lineup was because he felt like he was under a lot of pressure. He was struggling with the pressure of starting, and that the question in Chris Bell's mind is now, when am I going into the game? And no longer, when am I coming out of the game?
There you go.
Yeah, and I think that's huge. I think it dates all the way back to when Coach Boeheim was here, too, because, I mean, it was the classic freshman thing when he would put him in, and same thing with Benny Williams, too.
Yeah.
You put him in, and then you're like, okay, when am I going to come out? If I miss a three or if I make a defensive mistake, am I coming out of the game? And I totally agree with that. The one thing I would say, though, is why it took so long for that to happen.
Right. Like, that's my question also. You're in your third year at Syracuse.
With
the
Chris
team
Bell.
is as bad as it's been in your time here. You're playing in front of as few people as you've ever played against.
Yeah.
Why now is Chris Bell feeling the pressure of starting 75 games into starting?
Well, and I think some of it goes to Autry. You got to know your players. Like, he obviously came to that determination. It was definitely the right one. But why did it take so long for him to take him out? Like, you got to kind of. It's like the different styles of coaching. Like, some guy needs a kick in the butt. Some guy needs to be coddled, and some guys need, both. And you got to know what your player needs. Chris Bell, like we've talked about, he needs kind of, I guess, a little bit of both to an extent. But finally, I mean, if that gets Chris Bell going, that's huge for Syracuse because, the last 2 years, the shooting has been the problem for the team overall. And Chris Bell last year was really the only solution. He hasn't been so far this year.
And we also saw something on the broadcast as well. I don't know if you caught this at the end of the first half where Adrian Autry was talking to Chris Bell.
Yeah.
Did you get any idea of the body language between those two?
Yeah, I mean, talking may be a nice way to put it.
All right,
He
sorry.
He
Okay.
reamed him out.
Ooh.
And I do think you're right, Jordan. He's kind of a weird case, Chris Bell, where sometimes that has to be the approach where you have to get on him, and other times I think he's a little more delicate. So, I mean, if you're a coach, like, that's kind of a tough situation.
Yeah.
Like, when do I go with which?
If you accidentally choose the wrong mode
Right.
of coaching, you shut down. That is pretty tough. I'm not gonna lie. It's like reading a person. It's being like a.
It's like talking to my sister. I don't know if I should go talk to her. Nope, leave her alone. Okay, I won't. I'll just talk to her later. It's like that. Yeah, I get what he's doing. Yeah,
Got to figure out the dynamics. I mean, something that also I think was interesting in today's game, at least, and the way that Syracuse played is Eddie Lampkin, especially in the second half, finally started to play some offense, or at least they started focusing in on Eddie Lampkin down low. He had 10 points, 7 rebounds in the second half, and I think that goes to the point where Syracuse knew Georgia Tech wanted to go down low, and then they kind of used it against them. And Syracuse is a team that wants to go down low as well with Eddie Lampkin, especially on offense, but they used it against them, especially attacking the paint in the second half.
Yeah, man, I talked about how Georgia Tech gets a lot of its offense down low. It also gives up most of its points down low. They also foul the third most of any team in the ACC, but Eddie Lampkin had a real bad first half. There was a point early second where he was 1 for 7 from the field with 2 points and 3 turnovers, and he was visibly frustrated. There was a play where J.J. Starling had the ball on the wing, and Eddie Lampkin was alone on his side of the floor posting up, and J.J. Starling kind of, gave it the pump fake towards Eddie Lampkin and didn't give him the ball, and Eddie Lampkin screamed. I mean, he was angry that J.J. Starling did not give him the ball. And Syracuse called a timeout, and J.J. Starling went over and he hugged Eddie Lampkin. And from that moment on, Eddie Lampkin was awakened. It was crazy. Like, that possession, I think, changed that game for Eddie Lampkin because he was a monster down the stretch.
I mean,
The
interesting
The hug.
dynamics with this team where they sit at in the season. I mean,
that's the turning point, Jordan. The hug. Mark it down. There you go.
For Eddie Lampkin or the team as a whole?
Both.
Both?
The hug.
I mean, he then ended up rocking the baby later in the game.
He did rock the baby, which was, I mean, that's just what he does. I guess, but yeah.
Yeah. I'm shocked that didn't get a roar at all.
No, well,
rock
it was,
the baby
it was a
now?
4-point game.
We
so.
can't be rocking the baby there. I'm sorry.
I mean, especially with the record, too. Andrew and I were talking about this earlier. When your record's that way, I mean, it's kind of like in football when the DB does the slot away, even though he had no
The seatbelts.
I
am so sick of the seatbelt.
He had no wherewithal and reason for why it was incomplete. You just love to see that. It was a classic Syracuse, like Jake said, Syracuse-Virginia game where it was just low scoring. They gritted it out, and I think that's, again, a positive takeaway. I don't want to be, again, a Debbie Downer. Syracuse got the win, and they found a way to grit out a win, which is great considering the last couple of games. I mean, Wake Forest was close. They ended up losing by double digits. Florida State was close at half a little bit. They ended up getting blown out in the second half. Like, this team has had uninspiring, especially finishes to games, especially throughout the entire season, and they finally gritted out a win down the stretch today.
Well, it's almost like they played like a incomplete 40 minutes, right? Where they somewhat played well for the entirety of the game, but not really. Like, it was just enough. So, I really just don't understand how to translate this win at all, Jake.
I think defensively it was clearly, to me, their most complete performance.
Okay.
What of the defense is in terms of was it the philosophy or the fact they were communicating or both?
It was both, and they forced, I think, 13 turnovers, which is 13's the number, which is a pretty good. I think the offense definitely needs to limit them, as I'm sure you guys
18
have talked
turnovers,
about.
yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it just felt like they drew up the right game plan and they executed it the right way for maybe the first time all season. There's also something weird. Georgia Tech would hold up a whiteboard with the name of the play written on it, which I have never seen in basketball. And again, credit to the Syracuse coaching staff. It wasn't every time that Georgia Tech would do the whiteboard, but when they had a set play that was on the whiteboard, Dan Engelstad, the Syracuse assistant coach, would pop up and look over and read the whiteboard, and each time he knew what to do.
So you're telling me we got a Connor
Stallions?
You're telling me we got a Connor Stallions and Dan
What
Engelstad?
in the Michigan football is that?
I don't know if they had a tip from another team or whatever it was, but Dan Engelstad was standing up and looking over at Georgia Tech's whiteboard, and Syracuse adjusted accordingly each time.
I know Ryan Randoni cannot believe that.
Nobody knows who Ryan Randoni is, Andrew. That's a fellow W8ER staff member.
Just a big Ohio.
Just to clarify.
Sorry, he's just a big Ohio State fan. I know.
There you go.
He's not very happy about the whole
I can't
team
remember.
thing.
I think it was with Doug earlier. We were talking about just the confidence in Adrian Autry. We're talking about, he keeps talking about the orange standard and, he's never really fully explained that. And I think at least from this game and the defensive philosophy like you're talking about, that's good and a positive thing to see and take some people maybe off the ledge with Autry a little bit. Obviously, in my opinion, he's not going to get fired anyway because of the recruiting class coming in year number 2. But it's a good showing that finally Adrian Autry, it looks like, outsmarted an opposing coach.
Yeah, I mean, from my perspective, Syracuse was clearly the better coached team in tonight's game, and I think that counts for something. And I think the one other thing for me with Adrian Autry is you can say whatever you want about the guy, but you cannot say he doesn't care. He was way into it tonight, and he gave a huge fist bump after the buzzer sounded, and he went over to shake Damon Stoudemire's hand. And he was somber almost in the post-game press conference. Like, he knew that was an embarrassingly small crowd for Syracuse. He knew it was an ugly offensive outing for Syracuse, and he did. He thanked the fans who did come, and he said, look, there's still a long way to go with this team and this program, and maybe it's not, he didn't say that, but the indication was maybe it's not going to be this year, but we're building it. And to hear that from him, I think, is encouraging.
Yeah, I think we're also we look at the other side of this coin too, Jordan, where Syracuse, again, this has been a pretty miserable season, if you will, but for this team to go out tonight, again, not play an exceptional game, but a game that you were capable of winning, and you did. For them to not kind of see the crowd as it is, look at that 0-3 record, and a Georgia Tech team who entered this game winning 3 straight against, some okay opponents in Notre Dame.
Teams that Syracuse is going to have to beat if they want to go to the ACC tournament.
Correct. And still, you got the job done tonight. So I think for the Orange, you could have looked at this game and said, no one's here. It's a what is it, Wednesday night, Tuesday night?
It's a Tuesday night.
There's no one here.
It's snowing.
It's snowing. We can just lay down and, drop an egg and go to 0-4, and who would really care because there's no one here? But they didn't, right?
Yeah.
They showed up. They won the basketball game. You got your first conference win of the season. You got your 2,000th win as a program as well. So you make some history doing that, but at the same time, you show up.
They were already at 2,000.
What are you talking about?
They were over. That's only without the vacated wins.
Are you a you're not a vacated?
Give them the wins back.
Okay. I've always thought that the vacated wins are for the coach, not the actual program. Because the program's, the coach still won the game, too.
I'm just going off the ESPN graphic, guys. That's just what it said.
Hey,
sorry.
You're by the book, Andrew. That's what we appreciate about you. Syracuse, by the book today, they got the win. And again, they had a good second half. And Adrian Autry might have been somber in the post-game presser, but, that's got to be huge. I think the fist pump is very showing.
Yeah, I
it's
agree.
like they needed, not
just get the monkey off the back.
They needed this win to kind of lift themselves up from the last couple of weeks and the entire season that they've endured.
And the other thing is, this game started a stretch of opponents that are not the best the ACC has to offer. So you go, after this Georgia Tech win, you go Boston College, Louisville, Notre Dame over the next 3. All 3 are winnable games for Syracuse. And, hey, maybe you get Donnie Freeman back. The update on him from Adrian Autry was that he's day-to-day. It was an injury that happened in the Florida State game, so it did sound like there was at least a chance he was going to play today, and there will be at least a chance that he will play in the next game at Boston College. But that stretch coming up, if they get Donnie Freeman back and J.J. Starling keeps clicking, and maybe they found something with Chris Bell, and all of a sudden they can string a couple together. I'm not saying they're national championship bound, but this stretch is important for them.
I was telling Andrew that if they don't win this game, especially with how bad or how good the SU defense was playing against Georgia Tech's offense, that if they didn't win this game, they were not going to win Boston College. They weren't. If you can't beat Georgia Tech at home when they are shooting poorly, you're not going to beat a Louisville or Notre Dame or Boston College. Clemson and Pitt, the 2 games after that 3-game stretch, two teams that are just better than Syracuse.
Yeah.
You start looking for where is that first ACC win, and I think that's probably the fist bump is the first Power 5 win or the first Power Conference win, whatever you want to call it in college basketball, and the first ACC win for Syracuse. It's, in the year 2025, the thought that we'd be saying it was huge for Syracuse to get their first ACC win is, especially men's basketball. In football, I mean, before the Fran Brown year, maybe you could believe it, but in men's basketball, it's been quite a season, Andrew.
You got to start somewhere, Jordan. You got to start somewhere, and hopefully this is the start of something beautiful. We got a comment in our YouTube chat by Jonathan Baum. He said, "You guys are some fine young men," so I appreciate that comment as well. If you want to interact like Jonathan just did, please do so. Call in 315-443-2011 or text us at 315-556-3929. And don't forget to interact with us on Twitter and YouTube like Jonathan just did at WAER Sports Talk. But it's Jordan Leonard, Andrew Delpiano, and a reporter from tonight, Jake Klein, breaking down Syracuse's 62-55 victory over Georgia Tech. And Jake, we've been talking about a lot of these Syracuse moving pieces going forward. Did you think you saw – we were talking a lot about starting lineups as well. With the 5 that Syracuse had out there late on the floor, do you think that was the best option Syracuse could have gone to?
Yeah, I mean, Chris Bell was out there all the way through. He hit a big shot at the end that Adrian Autry actually gave him props for. I mean, I'm going to be honest. If I'm Syracuse, I would end games with J.J. Starling and whoever you feel like are the 4 best defensively. Because in crunch time, I think the knock on this team early, preseason, John Rothstein from CBS Sports was talking about it. Like, there's no alpha dog. I completely disagree with that. J.J. Starling is that alpha dog.
Is he the alpha dog by default, though?
No, he's an alpha dog
I think
by
I
himself.
agree with Andrew. He's an alpha dog.
Okay.
Well, Georgia Tech, at one point in this game, the only time they led, they went on a little run. They had all the momentum for a good period of time. Gino Antamarino even pointed it out on the broadcast. He said Georgia Tech has all the momentum right now, and he was right. And J.J. Starling stepped up and hit big mid-range jumpers on back-to-back possessions and killed that momentum.
Yeah, I mean, he had 21 points. I'm pulling up the second half exactly at 13 points, and a lot of them coming down the stretch. And again, that's what Syracuse did today. The kill shot, there wasn't the kill shots of the 10-0 runs that the stat is, but the kill shots down the stretch to stop those runs. Because like you said, Georgia Tech got within 4, within 2 a couple times in those last couple minutes, and Syracuse was able to withstand it. And one more question that I got to give you, Jake, and it goes to the presser. We talked about Donnie Freeman being day-to-day, but other than Autry's kind of body language and feeling a little bit down as it appeared, what was kind of the biggest thing that you took away from Adrian Autry's post-game presser?
I mean, it was the defense, and that was my takeaway before listening to Adrian Autry post-game. But he really liked what he saw from Jair Davis defensively. He commented on Peter Majstorovic, who he compared to Marek Dolezaj and said,
he did?
Yes, I know it's the natural.
No.
But he compared him to him, not in the fact that he's European, but in the fact that, nobody knew who this guy was. Syracuse found him.
In August.
Right.
Or a little bit before. But.
And he's just earned his minutes, and he commented on Eddie Lampkin's defense and praised that as well.
Fair.
Well, let's get back to some big picture stuff. I know we've been kind of getting a little bit nitty-gritty, but we have Dave from Liverpool. He wants to talk about head coach Adrian Autry. Dave, what do you got for us?
Yeah, if a lot of people want to still keep Autry, I would love for Syracuse to hire a head coach to be on the bench with Autry to help him out.
That's not a bad shout. Do you have a person in mind, Dave?
No, but I just noticed, like Rick Pitino sometimes will have other head coaches on his bench, or, whatever, Duke, North Carolina, or other college teams around the country will have former head coaches that don't mind, helping out.
Yeah, I actually like that. I think it just helps in terms of the in-game management, too. When you look at it, whether it's lineups or different decisions that he has to make, going down the stretch and different stuff like that. Thanks for the call, Dave. That's actually a really good idea that I actually hadn't thought about until Dave mentioned in terms of staff configuration, because he does have a couple he has one longtime assistant, Griffin, and then he has Strawn, who got here the year before, I believe.
Yeah,
and then
sounds about
Engelstad he
right.
hired when Jerry left, but
Yeah, I mean, Dan Engelstad is
He is
technically a former head coach, but at
but-
Mount St. Mary's. But I think what Dave is talking about is someone who's been around the block. Coach Cal at Arkansas has Kenny Payne, the old Louisville coach, on his bench. Danny Manning, who was the head coach at Wake Forest for a long time, has been on a couple different Power 5 benches since. I think that's a good idea.
Yeah.
Get him someone who's been around the block a little bit.
You got any names, Andrew?
I'm the last guy to ask about head coaches in
come
college
on.
basketball.
I thought you know some basketball.
Yeah, just the X's and O's, my friends, not the management side. That's the part I'm working on in my basketball knowledge, at least. But Jake, let's transition to a little bit of fun now. We've gotten to the nitty gritty of this game a lot, but we had this idea.
That's the name. Our producer, I was trying to search for it.
What?
Mike Hopkins was the name that came to mind.
Yeah, I mean that would just be
technically
a kick
a former
in the face for Mike.
Is
Hopkins.
that the Washington guy, right?
Well, he's former Washington.
Okay,
He's not there
all right.
anymore.
There you
But
go.
he was the person in line for Jim Boeheim.
I mean, for Mike
name was
Hopkins to
escaping
be the coach in waiting at Syracuse and then go to Washington and kind of fall on his face and then come back and be
But isn't
the
he friends
assistant
with
for,
he was assistants with
Yeah,
Autry.
but he's an assistant coach for the Phoenix Suns right now.
Wow.
You're not going to get him.
That team's not going
back-
anywhere.
That's a great team, the Valley.
That team's not going anywhere.
Okay, all right.
You can't say no, you ball. Think that team's going anywhere.
I
They're about to trade for Jimmy Butler and give up Bradley Beal.
They're about to trade for Jimmy Butler?
No, not really. but
Okay,
Jimmy
well.
Butler wants to go there.
All right. Well, either way, Jake and Jordan, we got a good segment from our producer Jish Shikolsky that he brought in, because again, we have a long double overtime. We're going till 11 o'clock, so stay with us until then, please, if you will. And he compiled, and this is fantastic, some freezing cold takes, and put them in a rundown, and we're just gonna list them off. Does that sound like fun? We're gonna react to them. This is mostly stuff from the beginning of the season. I want to start with our engineer in Hudson Ridley, who said at the beginning of the season
On Sports Night.
that he said this team was never going to make the tournament with Judah Mintz's play style. Judah is the least impactful departure from last year's team.
Yeah, I mean, if you're
Thoughts?
Syracuse, you'd probably take a Judah Mintz right about now.
Oh, okay.
Hudson, you have any response for that? I know Judah Mintz, the leader of last year's team, but least impactful?
Look, I don't have any kind of response to that in general, but I stand by it. Because if you think about it.
Hudson, turn on the other mic. You got it?
You guys got me here?
There you go.
There we go.
There you go.
Well, look. I think the problem with that take is it's correct because they would never make it with Judah's play style. He was too ball dominant and all he did was shoot free throws. But at the same time, the other part was really, 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 really wrong.
So,
and I'd like to rescind that.
Do you think this team? I guess the question would then be: do you think this team would be better? Sorry, do you think this team would be better with Judah on this roster right now?
I mean, yeah,
That's the biggest
technically, but they still also wouldn't make the tournament. So it's a double-sided part to that. They would not make the tournament with this current roster and Judah Mintz. It would just be this team shooting more free throws than they did and still probably hitting at the same clip and same percentage. So, no, I don't really think this changes a whole lot, not having Judah in terms of, they would be better, but they're still not making the tournament. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree. It definitely wouldn't help the defense.
I feel like.
I mean, I think they would be. I feel like you have to. So it depends on if you're saying if J.J. Starling was out like he was, I do think they would be better because obviously Judah could run the point and score. But if J.J. Starling was still healthy, I think Syracuse's record would be above 500.
Syracuse's team is a composition of supporting cast members.
Yeah.
That outside of maybe J.J. Starling doesn't have the Judah Mintz.
Yeah.
And I think this current supporting cast member group is probably better than last year's with, Justin Taylor starting every game of the season.
Yeah,
Two Justin Taylor references.
So in this bizarre hypothetical where we bring Judah Mintz back and put him on this year's team, yeah, I like it.
I don't know. I feel like the benches are just so different this year, the supporting cast, partially because like the entire supporting cast left, obviously, but they're just kind of compiled of a bunch of different players and what they bring to the floor. But a solid that was on the basketball preview show, so
yeah,
I will give Hudson
true.
some credit. They were previewing the entire basketball season,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't I think Judah being on the team would make him better, but maybe it would make him worse in a couple different ways.
Well, again, you need a main actor, right, in a play, and there's a lot of different supporting cast characters. But again, at the end of the day, you need that main character to drive your story through. And again, I think Judah Mintz could have been that guy for this year at least.
So Hudson, I gotta ask you another question. So put your headset back on so you can hear us.
Keep this rolling.
Gotcha. We got another tweet. It also came back from that basketball preview show and has to do with Jaquan Carlos. Both you and Austin, so it's not just you, believed that Hofstra transfer Jaquan Carlos would bring a new dimension to SU's offense. Do you care to comment at this point?
I stand by that.
Jaquan,
Is this
10
are we
minutes?
just throwing Hudson on the bus
no,
now?
These are the two Hudson takes
All right.
in the
Is this-
freezing cold takes. We're
Segment,
debating.
yes.
This new dimension is called the turnover.
Yeah, the new dimension. The new dimension is being really bad. I mean, that's the new dimension. Having a point guard that is bad and that cannot defend. So if you wanted a new dimension, there it is. I mean, I didn't specify, so I think that might save me a little bit. No,
That probably does.
The
save you 'cause
technicality,
it wasn't
yeah,
specified.
technicality.
Maybe it was one of our sports talk desk members not putting enough clarification
Perhaps.
in there. You never know. We,
All right.
we don't
I
want
will
to
say on that same show, I think I said that they would finish 23-9. And
Oh,
make
did
the
you?
NCAA.
Oh.
Make the
We got to get
NCAA.
Jish.
Should've found that
Too bad
one.
we didn't get Jish to find that one and play
That's
it as a
okay.
soundbite on the double overtime. But
There's plenty of bad from that show. Keep going through it.
there's plenty of bad from these tweets. I mean, Nick Aquino on Twitter
Yeah,
on
this one
April
is-
6th on 2024 said Syracuse's floor will be the Sweet 16 and the top 3 in the ACC. And, to be a little bit introspective, I'm not saying I saw Syracuse being this bad, but I never saw Sweet 16 or top 3 in the ACC. I don't know about you, Jake.
Yeah,
but-
I think the understanding was ceiling sneak into the NCAA tournament. I don't think anybody thought top 3 in ACC, apparently except for Nick, who, I tend to think is probably just exercising some blind fan optimism here.
That's fair.
Okay. I had him top 5 in the conference, so I am a.
Did you actually?
I am a victim to this team being tricking me as far as you can go down the
I don't
line.
even know.
What about it made you think top 5? Like,
I-
where did you go
I
wrong?
was on the same page as Austin Barrick and Hudson Ridley and thinking Jaquan Carlos was going to be like the next generational Johnny Flynn. I'm sorry. All right, I'm sorry.
You thought he was going to be the next generational Johnny Flynn?
I wouldn't say Johnny Flynn, but he could
You
be.
just did say Johnny Flynn. though.
Well, generational. That's,
Okay.
That word
Okay,
saves me a little
okay.
bit. But so, again, I like at the point I brought up earlier in the show about like how he does a good job of stretching the floor to just about everyone. I mean, it's 17 assists in a game last year against Northeastern. Again, not a great Northeastern
Against
team.
Northeastern.
17 assists is still 17 helpers.
Did you have a preseason prediction that you either wrote down or thought of before the year started?
Yeah, I mean, I don't have any evidence of it, but
we believe you. We trust you.
yeah, I mean, my stance was like I said, absolute ceiling was that you snuck into the NCAA tournament. I thought, more than likely it was going to be a downgrade. 20 wins was pretty good.
Yeah.
And I didn't think they were going to be 20, but I probably thought they were, going to be 16 to 18. Now, I think if you're a Syracuse fan, you'd probably be happy with like 13.
Yeah, I mean, double digits. I think would be I guess
Yeah.
after this way it becomes more realistic.
Yeah.
If they didn't win today, would definitely be a feat. I think too, when you're talking at least in terms of preseason predictions, NCAA tournament, 20 wins is not necessarily in the tournament now.
Well, it
Especially
used to be, but not.
used to be, not anymore though.
Clearly not
the
anymore.
ACC is not the
Yeah.
conference where every game on the road is a quad 1. I mean, some of these road games coming up are going to be quad 2s, not quad 3s, but on the road. But home games could be quad 3s. So making the NCAA tournament at 20 wins is not a gimme anymore, Andrew.
No, it's absolutely not. And to be honest, I'm kind of done with the narrative of the whole 20 wins. I
No,
really
I
am.
agree.
It's because, again, it's a great benchmark to hit in year one. But the goal every year is to make the NCAA tournament, right? And if
Especially
you don't,
for Syracuse.
And if you don't reach that goal, are we celebrating an invitation of the NIT that Syracuse didn't accept? No, we're not.
You need so much more than 20 wins to make the NCAA tournament now. 20 wins might get you in if you have the metrics that support it, but 20 wins...
They weren't quality 20 wins.
Right, and 20 Mountain West wins with metrics is more than 20 ACC wins with no metrics.
Well, and this brings up the argument that, Nick Saban and Kirk Herbstreit talk about in the terms of the college football playoff in terms of, what teams you played. Do wins against other teams matter more? And in the metrics, they definitely do. And, at the end of the day, Adrian Autry said it before the year, is you just got to win games. The more you win games, the more you'll have a chance to get in the NCAA tournament. And they just haven't done that this season. And I guess that's like one of the big takeaways you can take from this game tonight is they got to win. As bad as they've looked in the last couple of games and all season against Power 5 teams, they got to win. It doesn't matter how you did it. Whether you're good on defense, good on offense, bad. You could be bad on offense and bad on defense, but I guarantee you, Syracuse, if you won 5 games in a row by being bad on offense and bad on defense and finding a way to get a W, they would be happy. I don't know. I mean, unless you have a different opinion. Victories, I think, is really what matters at the end of the day.
Yeah. In a normal season, I agree with you, but at this point, Syracuse is not going to the NCAA tournament. We know that. And at this point, it's maybe they will or maybe they won't make the ACC tournament. So, and Tyler Aiken and Luke Burgess had a similar debate the other night after the Florida State game on the double overtime. But at this point, it's do you want to win 5 cruddy games against Boston College and Notre Dame where you gut them out and win ugly? Or do you want to get, Elijah Moore 25 minutes a run and let him grow into next year?
So that'll be an interesting thing to monitor and on how they develop people. When midway through what you were saying, I was like, well, they're not tanking for a lottery pick kind of thing. But the development of certain players that you expect back, I think, is huge going forward. Will Donnie come back? Probably not. Maybe, but probably not. But Elijah Moore coming back, those guys, you definitely need to get run because if you're talking about improvement, if Autry is most likely going to keep his job going into next year, probably a make it or take it kind of year, you need to have the guys that are going to be there, be ready to play in the system that you want, whether it's defense, offense, and to help a Kyan Anthony or a Sadiq White adjust to that when they get there.
Well, the biggest problem that I keep coming back in my head when we talk about next year already as well as we've kind of already washed this season away is we don't know who's going to be back next year, right?
Yeah.
Because with the age of
every year now.
I mean, yeah, exactly. With the age of the transfer portal, guys are walking in the door one year after another, and you really never. Again, I sound like an unk when I say this, but the traditional 4-year method of a guy coming in as a freshman, developing into a senior, that's dead. That's dead.
Especially with the same team.
I mean, the NCAA is granting the 5th year of eligibility now.
Well, not yet.
Well, potentially.
Potentially.
For all sports. I mean, can you imagine saying that to someone 30, 40 years ago?
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
I can't. I can't imagine it. I mean, it used to be if you transfer, you had to sit out a year.
Right.
So, I want to go back to some of these takes too because they're very interesting, and they were before the season, so we'll give them a little bit of credit. They hadn't seen the team played yet, but Sam, and I hope I don't butcher his last name, but Stavrakos tweeted out that he predicted Donnie Freeman would win the ACC Rookie of the Year and Syracuse going to March Madness, as well as Cuse Mode Jimbo tweeted out on April 6, 2024. It's so early and there's so much more to get done in the offseason, but I believe we will witness a much more disciplined team that vastly improves its rebounding and scoring inside the paint. I'm not going to lie. I don't know what happened on April 6th for him to say that. What happened? I honestly,
I think that was the national championship.
And by the way, April
might have been.
April 6, 2024 is the same day that Nick Aquino tweeted Syracuse 4 will be Sweet 16 top 3 in the ACC.
I don't know what's with April 6th.
Yeah, weird day.
For
the Cuse Mode Jimbo tweet, I think the improved in rebounding and scoring inside the paint actually
makes sense.
Are accurate. Much more disciplined team. Oh dear.
Well, the turnovers spell definitely a less disciplined team. What was the stat? 5 straight games with 15.
5 straight games with 15 plus turnovers.
I mean, you can't play basketball like that. And if you want to knock J.J. Starling, I guess, for one thing, is he did have 4 turnovers, granted, in 37 minutes.
All right. April 6th, Final Four. UConn beat Bama and Purdue beat NC State.
So they just had...
They saw DJ Burns play basketball and said, "Okay, this is what
Eddie Lampkin.
Yes, this will be the difference maker." As DJ Burns, but I digress.
I mean, our sports director here, Tyler Aiken, was beyond the moon when Eddie Lampkin committed here because of the big nature, big man.
And he makes great food too, so that's a huge plus.
And I won't say that I wasn't thinking that, but I mean,
the food part?
No.
Oh, okay.
The performance part.
That part, yeah. That's
the
different.
performance part. Right. But, I mean, I don't think I would have ever... honestly, like, the whole... Yeah, like you said, Jake, the discipline part is the thing that gets me in the Cusmo Jimbo part. Jeff Cuse on Twitter also predicted a Georgia Tech win today because...
Oh, they went out there and proved them wrong, didn't he?
They did. Maybe that's the noise that Adrian Autry is referring to.
Yes.
The Twitter
Adrian
bots.
Autry was in the locker room right before the game scrolling at Jeff Cuse.
I mean, Syracuse was favored in this game.
Yeah.
They did cover.
They did great.
Good teams win. Great teams cover. That's what we love to hear
Tale as old as
here on
time.
WAER. It's been a pleasure hanging out with you, Jake.
Yeah,
on this
thank you
double
for having
overtime.
me.
Syracuse gets the victory, 62-55. First ACC win, first Power Conference win of the season comes after the calendar turn. We got a couple more minutes here on the double overtime, going all the way up until 11 p.m. Andrew and I give our final words after our last quick break. Don't go anywhere. It's the double overtime here on WAER.
We know you've got a lot to do in a day, and sometimes it may not be easy to tune in at exactly the right time to catch WAER News. But WAER News is always available, wherever and whenever you are, without a paywall. Visit our website to use our live stream, or catch up on local and national news, as well as podcasts on our website at WAER.org.
Every year, the MIT Technology Review publishes a list of breakthrough technologies that might shape our future. This year's highlights items like burping remedies for cows to fight global warming.
When cows burp, and they do this a lot, they are burping up methane, which is a very potent greenhouse gas.
I'm Mary Louise Kelly. We speak with one of the editors behind the list on all things considered from NPR News.
Weekdays from 4 to 6 on WAER.
Hi, I'm Chris Boyd, host of Think. Think is a show for curious minds. Whether we're discussing history, science, politics, or the arts, my hope is that every conversation inspires curiosity and complexity, and that every listener walks away with their own questions, inspiration, and a thirst for more knowledge. Tune in and join me as we learn something new and take a moment to think.
Weekdays from 2 to 3 on 88.3 WAER.
With the ISO, drives inside, gets to the right elbow, turnaround jumper, and he's clutch and drills it. Give it to your leader and get out of the way.
Welcome back on the double overtime here on WAER. Just got about 9 minutes left until 11 p.m. Syracuse, Andrew, again, one more. They did it.
They did it.
Syracuse 62, Georgia Tech 55, defying the noise, gets their first ACC win, first Power Conference win of the season. They improve, Andrew, to 7-8 on the year. We got our last couple minutes here on the show. Like I mentioned, that means it's final words time, Andrew. What are your final words?
My final word, Mr. Leonard, is that J.J. Starling was the answer all along. JJ, he's so back. 21 points tonight, surpassed his season average of just around 18 points per game, has scored in double figures in all 8 games he's played in so far, and you can tell there is a sizable difference with this team when he is on the floor. Everybody just kind of takes the monkey off their back, your shoulders loosen just a little bit because you know when number 2 is on the floor, everything's going to be all right. And I really think we saw it in a lot of games this season, but maybe especially this one. Comes down the floor. We just heard Griffin Marcy say it. Hit a clutch shot in the final minutes. Knocks down a pair of free throws with just about 27 seconds left to really seal the deal. And even when we saw it in the front end when before the injury, he's Mr. Clutch out there. You're only going to give the ball to one guy on Syracuse. That's J.J. Starling. He continues to possess that tonight in their first ACC win of the season. If Syracuse magically wants to contend in the ACC, you have to rely on J.J. Starling going forward. No if, and, or buts about it.
Contend being what?
Make
the ACC
make
tournament?
the ACC tournament.
Okay, I'll take that.
Sneak
I'll
in.
take that. I agree. J.J. Starling was great this game, and they're going to need him the rest of the year. But this win changes nothing. And I don't want to be. I hate being a Debbie Downer on a win.
You have been Mr. Debbie Downer all
that's fine.
night
then
long.
I'll embrace it. I'll
All
embrace it. And I think that everyone understands that. I think this is a Captain Obvious take. And Adrian Autry knows this. Syracuse fans know this. You know this. Jay Klein knows this. This changes nothing because we've seen Syracuse basketball the entire season. They cannot win a game against a power conference team. They finally showed it tonight. They can't make threes. They can't play defense consistently. They give up more points on average coming into this game than they score. So this changes nothing. I think it doesn't change anything down the stretch too, because what they need to do down the stretch and not focus on winning games per se. Obviously, they want to do that. Adrian Autry wants to do that. Every team wants to do that. I'm a Jets fan. I see that all the time. They want to win games down the stretch. That's fine when you're already out of it.
You want to lose draft picks. I get you too, my friend.
You need to develop your guys, like Jake said. I think that's the biggest point. You know, Elijah Moore didn't play that much today. He played 17 minutes. He started the game, but didn't play too much down the stretch. Donnie Freeman was out with an injury. He'll play more when he comes back. But developing these guys down the stretch is going to be a big key to then not just winning games. This game doesn't change anything. This team still has a lot of problems. On defense, they turn the ball over a lot. 5 straight games, Andrew, you said it. 5 straight games with 15 or more turnovers. 18 today. They still had more turnovers than Georgia Tech, even though they won the game. So this game changes nothing, changes no thoughts about Syracuse fans. Again, I'll read the number, 13,935.
Great crowd, right? Great crowd.
We've heard from our reporter, Jake Klein.
No.
We've heard from Doug from Syracuse and Jay from Syracuse that it did not even feel like, maybe felt like around 10,000. And that's pretty pathetic for Syracuse basketball. The fans know this doesn't change anything. I know this doesn't change anything. Everyone should know this does not change anything. We'll talk about the positives. We'll talk about the negatives. We'll talk about what Adrian Autry needs to do going forward. He had a good coaching performance today in the philosophy that he drew up, like Jay Klein said earlier in the show. But this changes nothing. Will they do that? Could they come out against BC on the road and lose by double digits? They absolutely can. They absolutely can. And BC's not a great team. They're 9-6. They have 1 win in the ACC entering today. That absolutely can happen. Could they lose to Louisville at home? Could they lose to Notre Dame? They absolutely can, and we're back in the same spot. So this win, as it is good, and it is good to see that Syracuse can close out a victory in 2025, that we don't have to go the entire rest of the year without seeing Syracuse win a conference game. It does not change anything longer term in the season or even short term to the game on Saturday against Boston College. And that's what's up next for Syracuse, a 9-6 Boston College team. They're 1-3 in the ACC. That 1 win, though, coming against a very poor Miami team. And actually, they did lose earlier last week to Georgia Tech, 85-64.
Oh.
So there's a common opponent right there.
Transitive property, yeah.
Oh, yeah, if you want to use the transitive property at 10:56 p.m. on a
Why
Tuesday,
not?
January 7th. Hey, why not? I know you're going to the game to report on it for WAER Sports Talk. What are you looking forward to most going to the Conti Forum?
So a home cooked meal for my parents.
There you go.
And then my favorite thing about the Conti Forum is the size difference from the hockey rink down to the basketball arena. It makes the arena look so much smaller. But again, they sell out for the hockey games because they're always a top 5 team. Their basketball team couldn't be farther away from a top 5 team in the country.
Especially this year. They were all right last year. They're definitely one of the worst teams in the ACC, along with Syracuse. Anybody that's following, Syracuse's journey to potentially making or not making the ACC tourney, with this 1 win, they're now tied with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 other teams with 1 win in ACC play. California and Miami still with 0. That's Syracuse's next game, Boston College, on Saturday, January 11th. Andrew will be there in person, appearing on the double overtime all the way up until 7 p.m. with Andrew Selver and Griffin Marcy. But the game itself, tip-off at 3 p.m., McClure remodeling countdown to tip-off at 2:30. That's our next basketball game on Saturday. But we also got sports on Friday, Andrew. The lacrosse schedule dropped this afternoon.
Oh, finally. What are we, a month away?
Less than a month
my.
away, might I just add. The
Finally.
first game against Jacksonville on the 1st of February. We got sports night on Friday night from 8 to 9 p.m. Hudson Ridley and Griffin Marcy going to break down this game. The women's basketball team has school day on Thursday morning against SMU. Got the lacrosse schedule for men's lacrosse. Hopefully the women's lacrosse schedule comes out as well. That'd be great to break down to Friday night. You'll be calling in to Sports Night.
Should be a lot of fun. Tune in.
Should be a lot of fun. Sports Night, 8 to 9 p.m. on Friday. And then men's basketball starting at 2:30 with McClure Remodeling Countdown to tip-off. Game time at 3 in the double overtime. All the way up until 7 p.m. with Andrew Selver and Griffin Marcy. That just about does it for us here on the double overtime. Before we close the show, we got some thank yous to hand out. Jis Sikolsky, our producer, our engineer. You heard from a little bit on the mic, too. Hudson Ridley, our reporter, Jake Klein, and then our W8ER Sports Talk desk. Josh Richardson, Nick King, Ben Shadwick doing great stuff on the YouTube stream and the social media. Once again, Syracuse gets its first ACC win, its first Power Conference win of the season, 62-55. Syracuse moves to 7-8 overall, 1-3 in ACC play. Back in action on Saturday against Boston College. That does it. With Andrew Della Piana, I'm Jordan Leonard. Have a nice night, Syracuse.